The gentle breeze swept through the trees and across the surface of the lake, where a small group of ducks had gathered. Beside the lake, a couple was playing catch with their young son in the grass. Nearby, a woman walked her dog on the path. Shane watched the ducks from a bench by the path. Beside him, a weeping willow tree shaded him from the summer morning sun. The trench coat he'd worn previously lay neatly folded upon the bench next to him, where instead he wore a red t-shirt, cargo shorts, and a backwards cap. Birds chirped from the trees. A biker passed by. One of the ducks dipped its face into the water and shook it off. Shane recognized one of the ducks, and after a moment he saw that the duck recognized him. Eyeing him with an air of peculiarity, the duck removed itself from the group and glided to shore, where it stepped out of the water and waddled across the grass to where Shane sat. Shane made no motion, but simply spoke. "I didn't anticipate you would be here," he said. "Nor I, you," replied the duck. "You're pretty far from Kirka. Didn't you have friends or family there?" asked Shane. "I did," said the duck, looking away. "But it's been a very long time." Shane said nothing. The two exchanged a few more words about others they'd known, past events, and a few comments about the weather. As the discourse came to a close, the duck politely bid him adieu before spreading his wings and soaring above the trees and out of sight. The sun had risen slightly, and Shane saw that his shade was diminishing. After a short moment of contemplation, he rose from the bench and removed his shirt, shoes, socks, and hat. Scars lined his body. He walked across the grass and stepped into the lake. The cool water bit at his feet. Not minding it, he waded further in until the water rose to his knees, waist, and eventually his neck. He dove under and opened his eyes. The world under the lake was beautiful. The ground was lined with rocks, illuminated by the rays of the sun. Dust swirled wherever he stepped, and a distance away he could see a school of small blue fish traveling together. He sat on the bed of the lake and closed his eyes, feeling the cool water press against his skin. Then he rose and took a breath. A moment later, he was stepping from rock to rock before something caught his eye. He took a breath and dove. Something seemed to be buried in the rocks, which he moved aside and dug. When he returned to the surface of the water, he was holding a small stone with a dull magenta hue. It was recognizable as a meteoroid fragment, possibly made from minerals found in a nearby solar system. He pocketed the rock in his shorts and returned to shore. Noon had come. Shane returned to the bench and let the sunlight dry him. He brought the stone out from his pocket and observed it again. After a minute or so of turning it over in his fingers, he placed it back in his pocket and lay back. When he opened his eyes, he realized he'd drifted off to sleep. The position of the sun assured him that his nap had been brief, though his shorts had nearly completely dried. Shane rose to his feet and put his socks and shoes back on, along with his hat. His feet had dried enough that the task was not difficult. After he put his shirt on, he left his trench coat at the bench and began walking east. There, beside the lake, the land rose to a tall mountain, from which a small stream wound its way here and there before joining the lake. Shane left the grass of the park and entered the thicket of trees that marked the edge of the land, and rounded the side of the mountain for a few minutes before finding the stream. Its clear water joyfully splashed and licked down the slope and out of view. Shane cupped some of it into his hands and brought it to his mouth. It was refreshing, cool, and delicious. When he had drank as much as he needed, he arose to his feet and followed the stream through the forest up the mountain. A distinct smell filled the air. Shane recognized it as the vibrant scent of the gustine trees which dotted the mountain landscape. Their low-hanging limbs made them ideal for climbing. Shane continued his ascent. When about 10 minutes had passed, he came to a terrace that had been dug out of the slope. On the flat surface of the terrace lay a row of small plants that had sprung up from tilled soil. Some of them were producing small red vegetables. Shane knelt by them and felt the produce. One of them was soft, yielding slightly to the touch. He plucked it from the stem and brought it to the creek, where he dipped it in the water and put it in his mouth. The juicy taste compared lightly to that of tomatoes. When he'd finished eating, he picked up a plastic watering can that lay by the garden and filled it in the spring. He took the water and gently showered the plants with it. Seeing the dry, light dirt turn a rich, moisturized brown gave him a certain satisfaction. He continued until the can was empty. After a moment of sitting still, he left the garden and ascended further up the mountain to a small grove of trees. Under the trees, a patch of melons were growing. They seemed to prefer the lesser light. Shane took one and carried it down the mountain to the garden, where he sat down by the creek. He produced a knife and began cutting into the melon's tough exterior. A sweet smell emanated from it as its juices dripped to the ground. When he removed part of the rind, he started cutting pieces out of the fruit and eating them. It reminded him of mango, in taste and consistency. As Shane was chewing, a movement caught his attention. A fair distance down the hill, a deer was moving through the trees to the creek, unaware of his presence. Shane cut another piece out of the melon and quietly moved down the slope. It didn't take long for the deer to hear him. As he came nearer, it lifted its head and faced his direction, alert and afraid. He stopped, 200 feet away, and looked the deer in the eyes. It watched him. He lowered himself until he was sitting on the ground. A moment passed. Then the deer started to approach, climbing the slope of the hill. It continued until it was directly in front of him. its antlers extended outward in a majestic display of power. Shane extended an arm. On his open palm was the slice of melon he brought with him. The deer lowered its head and took it. As it chewed, Shane stood up and pet the hair on its face and neck. Then it left. Back at the garden, Shane was finishing the melon. Inside the melon were 3 sizable pits, which he removed and set aside. Nearby, a shovel lay on the forest floor. Shane picked it up and began digging. The metal sank unexpectedly well into the dirt. A recent rain seemed to have softened it, if not for the rocks he would hit from time to time. Several minutes passed before a small trench was visible, stretching along the garden beside the other plants. Shane took the pits of melon and placed them at even increments in the trench. As he placed the dirt back over them, he acknowledged that they may not actually grow. The seeds may have been too close to the surface. He stood there a moment, observing his work and wondering to himself how long it would take to grow. Before long, Shane had descended from the hillside and was sitting under the weeping willow tree of the park. There was something mystical about it. It was no wonder people associated them with magic. He opened a hand and activated PSI fire, so that the flame danced in his palm. As he looked into the fire, illuminating the leaves of the tree around him, he thought over other epic heroes he'd known. Had any of them received powers from a weeping willow tree? It wouldn't be too far out of the ordinary, he guessed. But what would have been the point? He sat there for a few more minutes as the sun lowered in the sky. Then he left and ascended the hill once again. The sun had begun to set, splashing bright oranges and pinks across the sky like melon juice. Near his garden was a gusting tree he knew well. Shane grabbed the lowest limb. The bark felt smooth, partly from usage, as he pulled himself onto it. Above him he heard a squirrel scatter across a branch to leap to another. He continued his methodical climb. When he reached the top, he noticed the breeze had cooled just a bit slightly. Then he watched the horizon. At the foot of the mountain he saw the lake and the park beside it. The water's surface was serene and undisturbed, an oval mirror of the sky, where one, it seemed, could dive straight into another world. Perhaps he could try it someday. Night came on Cat's feet. Shane lay on his back, cushioned by the trench coat laid out under him. Above, he watched the stars glimmer into view, accompanied by the long blue tail of a passing comet. He eyed it with awe. He couldn't recall a time in his travels when he'd encountered one. Perhaps there was more to them than previously supposed. Perhaps they contained something hidden in a long-lost legend. What mystery and what power? What temporality? From where did it come and to where did it go? Will it ever reach its home? Or instead lose itself in the cold abyss where there is neither heart nor stone? The sounds of the forest enveloped him, and he drifted off to sleep.